Diana Dubbs joins us from Dreamlife Recovery to share her recovery story and talk about the evolving stigmas around mental health and substance abuse. She talks about selling recovery, finding her fit in the industry, establishing and protecting personal boundaries, and having mentor peers in her life. Enjoy. Welcome to the Illuminate Recovery podcast. We shed light on mental health issues, mental illness, and addiction recovery. Ways to cope, manage, and inspire. Beyond the self-care we will discuss, you may need the help of a licensed professional. My name's Kurt Nider. I'm a husband, a father, entrepreneur, a handyman, and a student of life. I avoid conflict, I deflect with humor, and I'm fascinated by the human experience.
And I'm Shelley Mangum. I am a clinical mental health counselor, and my favorite role of all times is grandma. I am a seeker of truth, and I feel like life should be approached with tremendous curiosity.
I ask the dumb questions.
I fill in the gaps.
The Illuminate Recovery podcast is brought to you by Illuminate Billing Advocates. Make billing and collection simple with leader in substance abuse and mental health billing services. Verification and analysis of benefits, pre-authorizations, utilization management, accurate claim submission and management, denial and appeal management, and industry-leading reporting. Improve your practice's cash flow and your ability to help your clients with Illuminate Billing Advocates.
Today on our podcast, we have Diana Dubbs. And Kurt and I are super excited to talk with Diana. She has a recovery story of her own as well to share. She's the Director of Business Development at the Eastern Region at Dreamlife Recovery. And Dreamlife Recovery offers a variety of options which allow us to find a method of therapy that works best for each of us. We all know that every person is different, and so we individualize, or Dreamlife individualizes the program to find the right fit for you so you can find success in recovery. Diana has been with Dreamlife for several years and is making a difference in the treatment world. Diana, thanks for being on.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's kind of fun. We were just chit-chatting before we started the recording, and you were sharing some really fun things. And one thing that we say this often, but it's kind of funny. I mean, I giggle almost every time. Is I don't know of anybody. I have yet to check with anybody that said, "Yeah, when I was little, I said I want to be in substance abuse treatment. Like that's what I want to do for my living, right?" Like nobody says that, and so it's kind of fun to find out how people's history and how they ended up here in the treatment world, which is an incredible industry. It's different than any industry I've ever been in. So. Maybe just share a little bit of your story.
When you were explaining that, I'm cutting you off first. When you were explaining that this time, I thought maybe it's because when we were kids, the emotional intelligence wasn't there. And now with the number of adults that are going through recovery, it could be that this upcoming generation is the generation who sees their parents in recovery and is like, that's what I want to do. And they do this from the beginning instead of being sober and then getting into the industry like the rest of us. Maybe we're part of the change.
It's also pretty funny too. Sometimes you get the opposite effect. Like when people ask me what I do for a living, like on the soccer fields when I'm hanging out with my kids, and they're like, "What do you do?" And I'm like, "I'm in sales." And they're like, what do you sell? And I'm like, I work for a substance abuse treatment program. My product is treatment. And they're like, who do you sell to? I'm like, everyone. And their immediate response is like, oh. And you can see their body language change. But it's really funny, to make that intro to people who don't know. And this isn't normal to them. Like, it's not normal to work with drug addicts all day, but it is in my world.
Yeah, right. Well, and what Kurt said kind of lends to the idea that we didn't even know as kids that such thing existed, right? So of course we didn't say we wanted to be in substance abuse, right? Because that, we might have been in the world where we had parents or people we knew that had addiction, but we didn't understand that you could recover from that. So it's a trick question. It's true.
Yeah, I mean, Listen, I did what everybody else did. I came out of treatment. freshly sober, and I wanted to save the world, right? So, like, I wanted to cure everyone of this awful disease because I figured out what was wrong with me, and I needed everybody else to figure out what was wrong with them. So I knew that I wanted to do something in treatment. I did not want to be a therapist, no offense. I didn't really care why people did what they did, that never occurred to me that I wanted to sit and listen to people's problems all day, but I didn't know what else there was. I didn't deal with a treatment rep. I went to a facility that my doctor referred me to. So I didn't really know. I had reached out to a friend of mine, a friend of our family who was a clinician at that time. And I said, what can I do? Like, I don't want to be a therapist. I don't know what else there is, but I know I want to work in treatment, and I think I have something that I can offer. She said, she goes, if you really think that you belong in this industry, my suggestion to you is to go volunteer for a year. And if you can stay at an organization and volunteer for a year without getting paid and stick with the same organization, then you deserve to be in this industry, So I was like, all right. And I didn't really have anything else to do, to be honest with you. I was just getting married. I was already pregnant. I had a job. Nobody was really requiring me to do, provide for anything yet, So I was like, all right, I'm going to do that. So I found an organization, and I volunteered with them, and I ended up joining their board of directors. And then I started working with them pretty intensely, and they offered me a job working in their office. And I did. And I took the job working in their office, and it was supposed to be super light, like 3 days a week. It ended up being 5 days a week. And, they started teaching me the Medicaid process. And I live in New Jersey. And at that time, now we're going back 6 years ago. The process in New Jersey was very difficult to get somebody into treatment. It didn't look like it did today. It looked like you had to call every day. You had to wait to get a bed. You had to get up in the morning, start making the phone calls. You had to know somebody to get in. And, they basically said, like, if you can learn the Medicaid process with your eyes closed, we will teach you how to do interventions and work with people who have private insurance. I said, okay. And so I learned how to do the Medicaid process, and I started building contacts. Like, I would call anybody and anyone in the industry, in the nonprofit world, that had any sort of merit and say, can you help me? Can you teach me? And they did. And some of those contacts are literally near and dear to my heart today. We still work together, and we do some amazing stuff together. But I just started calling people and asking for help and asking people to teach me how to do things. And then I started working with patients who had private insurance, and I started doing interventions, and I started helping get people to treatment, and I started learning different treatment centers. And it just became this process of just learning, right? And then I got pregnant with my second son, and unfortunately, nonprofit world does not pay for 2 kids and a husband and bills in New Jersey. So I decided that I wanted to go work for profit. And at that point, I had been introduced to marketing. I knew what that looked like. I knew what the different roles were. And I got a job working as a rep for a treatment center, and I was good at it. And the beautiful part about that was that I was able to still do all the things that I loved, which was the advocacy work, but help people get to treatment. And all those contacts that I built with Medicaid and no insurance, like, they were still there, and they were still helping me, and I could still help all the people that were calling that didn't have the resources, but now I could help the people that had the resources too. And I started building this, and I hate the term brand, but that's really what it was this, like, ability to, like, there was nothing that you could throw at me that I wasn't gonna figure it out, and still to this day, my treatment center laughs at me because I will throw at them some crazy cases, and they're just like, oh, like, what are we supposed to do with this? Like, this is impossible. And my response is always like somebody deserves a chance at recovery. Like, let's give it to them, you know? And 9 times out of 10, they always figure out a way to help the people that I'm sending over, but they're not easy. They're not easy cases to work with, you know? But I truly believe that everybody who calls me, there's an option for them somewhere. It's our job to figure out where that is.
There's a challenge too, because like a lot of times when somebody's truly ready, it involves having to hit rock bottom. Mm-hmm. And in order to get to rock bottom, you kind of have to exhaust a lot of options, right? So it's kind of this balance of like, I mean, nobody's ever going to show up to recovery with everything together. It's kind of the point, you know? Like, we need help.
I think sometimes though, because everybody's rock bottom is different, sometimes we need a little help identifying what rock bottom actually is, you know? And, you know, I don't know. It's just, I've had some people that are like, I have a job, I have all my bills paid for, you know, I make a lot of money. So what if I snort coke on the weekends? You know what I mean? Even though like they don't have custody of their children, they're about to lose their job. Like all these terrible things are happening to them, you know, but because they still have their things, they haven't gotten there yet. You know what I mean? You know, so it's, that part gets the tricky part, is being able to have that conversation and say, all right, yeah, you're not there yet, but you are going to be there. And sometimes you're going to get to treatment and then you're going to hit rock bottom while you're here, you know? So that's kind of what I've learned along the way, is how to have those conversations.
Well, and I love your enthusiasm, right? That you're not outside, you think outside the box, right? It's not like everybody fits into one pigeonhole. It's like, look, everybody's a little different. If we can't figure out how to help them and find a solution for them, then really why are we in this industry, right? Why are we doing this? There's got to be a way to help these people.
Exactly. And I think that the problem is, my treatment center is not always going to be the option for everyone. You know, we're not a fit for everybody, and I don't claim to be a fit for everybody, and I don't want people to send me every single person, because it is impossible for us to be perfect for every person out there. You know, there's 805 treatment centers in the state of Pennsylvania, and some of them are wonderful, wonderful facilities that have amazing things to offer other patients. You know, it's our job to put that person in the right hands. You know what I mean? And it doesn't always mean that that's in our admissions team's hands. You know what I mean? And I think that's what sets us apart from other people, is that if we're not the right fit, we will certainly get you to the right place, but we're not going to pretend that we are the right fit for you, if that makes sense.
Well, and you have to take that approach, right? It's the facilities that don't take that approach and try and help everybody, that they're not doing anybody a favor, because you're exactly right. And what you say is, it kind of shares the idea that you have a lot of wisdom, and you've developed a lot of wisdom and picked it up along the way. Maybe talk a little bit about your recovery story and some of those pivotal moments for you.
So I have been sober about 7.5 years. My sobriety date is October 21st, 2013. I got sober at a facility. Well, I went to treatment at a facility called Karen Foundation, which is one of the best resources here in the area. And at the time that I got sober, you know, there just weren't a whole lot of options. You know, there wasn't as many places to go. And to be honest with you, I didn't really know what was wrong with me. You know, I had spent so much time of my life, probably a good 16 years of just ripping and running. But I had always surrounded myself with people who did things like I did, until people couldn't do things like I did them anymore. Do you know what I mean? Like, people started getting married and having kids and like living their life, and I was still like buying Percocets on the corner in North Philly. You know what I mean? And it just wasn't fun anymore. Like it got, for me, like I couldn't get high anymore. So I was just trying to not be sick. And I was trying to feel better mentally, spiritually, physically, and I could never feel better. I just always felt worse, you know? And I come from a really good family. Like I don't have any kind of abuse in my family, no addiction, you know, in my immediate family. Nobody was traumatic to me. Like there was nothing textbook that should have made me how I am. It was just in me. It was, I never felt good enough. I never felt a part of. I was just always searching to be something more than I was. I just had no idea what it was, you know? And I did that my entire adolescence, my entire adulthood, you know, with every bad relationship, with every bad friendship. Like I was always searching to fill that hole, you know? In 2013, I shared with you guys before we actually started recording, like I was always a big drinker. I would always, you know, take what was in front of me as long as it was going to make me feel better. Like that was the first question I asked you. Is this going to make me feel better? Not, is this going to kill me? Is this going to hurt me? Because I just always wanted to feel good, you know? Alcohol was a constant, but in I would say 2010, I got hooked on opiates, and it was like a quick takeout. You know, within 3 years, it just wiped me out, you know? I kind of picture it like that big tidal wave that comes over. Like, that's what that did to me. It leveled me, you know? And it wasn't long that, like, all the things that happened with addiction, you know, the stealing, the lying, the cheating, you know, all those terrible things, like, they all happen to everybody who falls into this one way or another. And that was me. You know, I was like 115 pounds, soaking wet, hated who I was. My skin was gray. I hadn't probably slept in 3 years because we don't sleep when we're using Percocets. Like, it's just like this constant, like, your body's asleep, but your mind's awake, you know? And I was born, and that family that loves me so much, like, they realized that something was wrong with me, but they didn't know what was wrong with me because I'm first generation Italian. We don't talk about stuff like that, nor are we really educated on stuff like that, you know? So it was like, are you bipolar? Are you gambling? What's going on with you, you know? And I had spent my entire life learning that, like, I could negotiate my way out of things, you know? But, like, that night, I couldn't negotiate out of this. They weren't going to let me leave until I told them what was wrong with me. And I finally waved the white flag. Like I said, I'm a drug addict and I can't do this anymore, you know? And the minute that I said that, it was like 1,000 pounds off of my shoulders, you know? Now, the days following were horrendous, you know? But, you know, in that moment, it was like my deepest, darkest secret was out, and I didn't have to lie anymore, and somebody was going to help me get better, you know? But, like, even in that process, I didn't know what treatment was going to do. Like, I spent 3 days picking in my mom's kitchen because I didn't have insurance. And again, like, nobody knows what to do in New Jersey when we don't have insurance, you know? So I ended up at a state-run detox in North Jersey that my parents paid for. And now that I know that they overpaid for me to go there, you know what I mean? Because I was already 3 days sober at the time that I got there. And I spent 5 days there, and I ended up at Karen Foundation after that. And I didn't know, like, I thought that treatment was get the drugs out of your system, right? I didn't know that it was, we're going to teach you how to live your life because you don't know how to live your life, you know? And I did, like, I learned how to live my life. Like, I was petrified. I was petrified to come home and spend a Saturday sober. I had no idea how to do that because I had never done it in 16 years. I had never been sober on a Saturday, you know? I was petrified to have a conversation with people. I was petrified to make friends. Like, everything in my life was scary because I just didn't know how to do it. And I didn't realize that the minute that I stopped doing drugs and drinking, that even though all those things were scary, like life was a whole lot easier. Do you know what I mean? Because it was more manageable. My life was completely unmanageable before I got here, you know? And sometimes I laugh and I talk about how much I miss those early days of early sobriety. Like, you know, the time in your first 90 days where everything is so messy, and just so tangled up, and like everything's destroyed, but there's a reason for it. You were a drug addict, right? Like you were a drug addict, or you were an alcoholic, and you did all these things, and now you got to clean it up. Like today, when things get messy or tangly, it's because we're living life on life's terms, and like there's no other reason for it, and you're just a human being, and like it's just life. Like that's what happens. But like in those early days, it's very clear. You know what I mean? And sometimes I miss that feeling of just knowing exactly how to fix the problem, you know? And today, you know, I have all these other things that I have to do, you know, because I follow a program of recovery, and they tell me, you know, if God's not in it, then I have to find him first and all those things. And I have a hard time with stuff like that, you know, because I like to fix, manage, and control, and I still deal with those things, you know? I met my husband very early in sobriety. You know, I did everything they told you not to do. So in my first year, in my first 90 days, I met my husband. In our first 6 months, we were engaged and moved in together. And we were married at just over a year of sobriety. In that same year, I had my first son, who is my now 6-year-old. And just like two good drug addicts, we had our second son immediately following. I found out I was pregnant with him on my oldest son's first birthday. You know, and like there's a reason why we tell people not to do that. It's because you don't know how to love yourself, and now you're expected to take care of a family unit, right? Like you're now the matriarch of the family, but like I didn't even know where to drop our taxes off to. You know what I mean? You know, and by the grace of God, you know, my kids have never known me as anything other than sober, which is a beautiful thing. You know, they know I'm sober. They know that they might have an allergy to alcohol, so they should be careful because mommy and daddy have an allergy to alcohol. That's how we explain it to them, you know. My kids are kind, you know, we 12-step them all day long. And, you know, but it was hard early on. And there were times that I stepped away from my recovery, and there were times that I had to start over in my recovery. And there were times that I've had to, you know, ask for help again and feel like I did in that moment where I said, I'm a drug addict and I need help, but I didn't pick up again. And that's even worse. That's even worse of a feeling, you know? You know, in 8 years, my husband relapsed very early on in our marriage. He's okay now. He's sober and healthy and happy. And I learned from that experience that, you know, we all have different pathways to recovery, and what he chooses to stay sober today is not what I choose. And that's okay, because we still have the same end result, which is to live sober and teach our kids to be good people. And that's okay for me today, you know, and that may not have been okay for me 8 years ago, you know? And it's just through life that I've learned, you know, that, you know, all these things that have happened through my sobriety and through my addiction and all these crazy things, it's put me here in this place because I'm supposed to teach other people how to get through these things. You know, I'm supposed to teach people, you know, how to be there for their kids and how to be there for their husband, and, you know, and how we try to work through these things, and, you know, when enough is enough, and things like that, you know what I mean? And I think that because I put that stuff first, and I put my work stuff second, it has allowed me to be this person that has never suffered when it comes to work. Like I've never found I've been stressed out. I've had times that I've been worried, but like it always passes, and it's never something that has made me suffer.
Well, and I imagine too, Diana, I'm going to pause just for a second, and Kurt, you're going to want to catch this and edit it out. But we're getting a little bit of feedback from you, Kurt. If you'll mute
For me?
yeah, just a little bit. So I love the way you tell the story, and you kind of address, Diana, the idea that like here you are in a relationship early on, the very thing that they say don't do that, and then you get married and you have kids, and those are super challenging transitions for someone who's not dealing with addiction, but someone who's recovering from addiction and still trying to figure it all out. That's got to be really difficult and challenging. What were some of the hardest parts for you, and how do you so two parts to that question. What was it like for you, and then how do you talk to people, because that's a common thing, right? That's a common thing. We tell them don't get into a relationship because you're not ready for that, but it's the first thing we want to do, right, is find some companionship and connection.
So my husband is my person. He's the only person in this world besides my sponsor that knows everything about me, and good, bad, and different. Sometimes he hates me for it. Sometimes he loves me for it, but, he was put in my life for a reason. And although our story is not conventional and I don't suggest it to many people, like everybody's journey is different, what I tell other people is that when you are getting into a relationship, here's why we tell people not to do these things. And here's why I'm telling you why we tell people not to do these things, because I lived it. You know what I mean? And I know from experience that it is incredibly hard to learn to love yourself and to love another human being the way that they deserve to be loved, and to ask them to love you the way that you deserve to be loved when you don't know what that looks like, I can't tell somebody, I go to AA, for sake of anonymity, and, we could talk about traditions all day. I'm like I think that they're outdated, but, the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous does not tell us that we can't date anybody in the first year. The big book of Alcoholics Anonymous does not tell us that you have to go to 90 meetings in 90 days. It doesn't tell us that you have to call your sponsor every day. Like, those are all things that we have created because we like to fix, manage, and control. Do you know what I mean? And, what the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous tells us is stop drinking, work the steps, and help another alcoholic, And as long as you're doing those things and being honest, and you're not hurting anybody, who am I to tell you that you can't engage and you can't, that's your story. You're going to have to learn for yourself too. And I'll be here to help you along the way.
Yeah, it's incredible. And I agree. Everybody has their different path, and it cannot be the same for any one person. But I'm wondering, as I've talked to lots of moms, and they talk about their, being pregnant and giving birth, and, and if there's one thing that I know, that children will test us and make us stretch more than anything else that I've ever experienced, right? And so how did you manage through all of those experiences that are new and unfamiliar,
I still manage through them.
Right?
I have two kids that couldn't be more opposite of each other. My oldest son is, like a sweet angel baby from heaven. And my second son is like the devil reincarnated some days, but I love them both dearly, and they're both my babies, and they both have these beautiful pieces of their personality, but there is no perfect way to mother. And I think that just because I'm an addict in recovery, it doesn't make me weaker than another mom. Do you know what I mean? I think that, a lot of times, if we're getting into mommy wine culture, because that's kind of where we are these days, is that mommy had a tough day, so mommy needs to have a glass of wine because the kids were acting up. Well, no, kids act up because that's how they communicate, and it's not always easy. And sometimes I communicate by stomping my feet and slamming doors and screaming and cursing. That's just who I am. So they do that too. We all have bad days, we have a rule in my house that we get to start over. So whenever my kids are throwing a tantrum or they're just really, really nasty for some reason, like I'll ask them, do you want to start over? And 9 times out of 10, they'll say yeah. And they'll go in their room, they'll compose themselves, or they'll give me a hug, or they'll cry a little bit. And then we just start over, you know? And it's like a reset button, you know? I try to do that as much as I can. And we all get to start over. You know what I mean? Doesn't always work, you know, but we just get through it, you know? I tell people all the time, like, you know, schedules and potty training and like, you know, we all do it, you know, babies cry, babies freak out. You need a babysitter, I'll be here. You know, like, you just ask for help. You know, it's kind of like getting into the business of recovery. Like, if I had never asked for help in the beginning, I wouldn't know half the people that I know today, right? So, like, if I don't ask for help when I'm parenting or with my husband or with my friends or in recovery, like, I'm not going to be where I am today.
Well, I totally agree. And I think that's the part of the story that might be a little bit harder to tell, is that you didn't get through all of that stuff on your own. You got through that stuff. Because I can tell, I'm hearing you talk about these awesome parenting skills that I know you didn't start with, right? We just don't start with those. Like, we have to ask, like, how in the world did you get through this, right? And we talk to people and we ask them questions and they tell us how they failed so that we can all do it a little bit better, right? But we do it together, right? You just don't do that alone. You don't figure that out alone. And so I love you talking about that piece.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I have an amazing family that is like this safety net around me, and they have been rallying for me since the day I stopped drinking and drugging, you know, and they had one rule in my house, and that was always do the right thing and we will be here to help you. And they did not lie. You know, the minute that I started doing the right thing, it didn't matter what else I did. And it didn't matter how badly I've screwed up in recovery, because I have, like, I've made some really bad mistakes in recovery, you know, but I haven't drank or drugged in almost 8 years. And they have been here to help me through everything, you know. I live in a town on the same street as my brother, who drove me to detox and treatment 8 years ago. We live 5 houses down from each other, and my mom and dad live on the opposite end of the street, you know? And it's a village, and it's beautiful. You know what I mean? And I honestly wouldn't, on most days, wouldn't be able to do things in my life without them, you know?
Yeah. And that's the beauty of it, is that we get to build these amazing support networks around us. And sometimes it's family, and often it's other people too, right? That a whole bunch of people become that kind of family connection and support.
So I have some amazing friends. Not a lot, but a few that are just, and I say not a lot because today I'm choosy about who's in my life today, right? Because 8 years ago, I would just surround myself with anybody, you know? And today it's just, when I bring somebody into my life, I'm not only bringing them into my life, I'm bringing them into my husband's life and my kids' life and, you know, my world. And that's important to me. That's my safe space, you know? And I have some beautiful women who are just there for me, you know, and who have been there to carry me through some really tough times. And, you know, it's that process of, like, when you ask me how I got through things, it's because somebody else got through them first and taught me how to get through them, you know? And I have literally somebody in my network that has been through almost everything in my life that I've been through, that I can go to at any moment in time and say, hey, I need your help. And if they haven't been through it, they'll tell me who to call. And I can call that person whether I know them or not, and they'll walk me through that problem.
Well, and I think that's your biggest gift, right? One of your biggest gifts is you're not afraid to get on the phone and say, teach me how to do this, right?
Yeah,
You could go find the person and go, teach me how to do this, whatever it is, right? Life or work or whatever.
No, I've never, I mean, you know, I've been super blessed in the past, however long that I've been doing this job. I don't know the answer. I don't know. Let me find the answer for you goes so much further than just lying, you know? And I wish more people got that and understood that. Just a simple, I don't know. I don't want to tell you the wrong thing. Let me find out what that answer is, has gotten me so much further and so much more ahead than anything else I could say in a conversation, you know? It's been good.
Yeah. Well, because your answer says, I don't have to have all the answers, but I want to get you the best answer, right? And for a lot of us though, when, before we get to a better place, it means something's wrong with us if we don't know the answer, or that we're flawed, or we get that shame around it, and that drives so many mistakes and errors, right?
Well, and we work in a business where there's not a whole lot of room for error, right? Because your product is treatment, and your consumer is a person. Do you know what I mean? Like you're putting your person through your sales product. Like, I mean, it's mind-boggling to me sometimes when we talk about what this looks like. You don't have a whole lot of room for error with this process, because that person leaves your treatment center. And here's the tricky part, right? We have no real way to say if this is going to work for you or not, and that person leaves your treatment center. And if you haven't given them 100% and they haven't bought in, right, and they haven't given their 100%, they leave that treatment center and they could die. You might not get a second shot at helping them again. And I think that's the piece that we forget sometimes, is that we're so focused on outselling our competition. Why does this person have this account? Why is this person, on Facebook selling this and this SEO and like all this crazy mind-boggling stuff to me, when at the end of the day, you might get one opportunity to help somebody, because your second opportunity might never come, because that person could leave and die. And I think that's the part that has never lost me. Even with, we get a little bit desensitized in this business. It gets hard to say that everything that happens truly affects me the way that it did 6 years ago, but I can honestly tell you that I have an invested interest in really wanting to help every single person that crosses my plate, that's where I am.
Yeah, and it's a tough balance. It is a tough balance to love people, but also have healthy boundaries, which we talked about that before we started recording the episode too, right? Those healthy boundaries. Let's talk a little bit about Dreamlife Recovery and what Dreamlife offers, and what it's doing to help people.
So Dreamlife Recovery Center is a dual diagnosis inpatient treatment center located in Western PA. So it's located in a town called Donegal, which is a very, very small town on the outskirts of Pittsburgh. When I took the job at Dreamlife, and it's important that you should know this, because this is how I feel about the facility, right? I was in a position where I was super frustrated with treatment in general, and I didn't know if I wanted to stay working in treatment. And somebody that I had worked for had said, you need to go find the facility where if your husband were to relapse, you would feel comfortable placing him there, So I started interviewing other people, I started going to inpatient centers and asking them, do you have a job open for me? And I had a couple offers on the table, and then somebody approached me and said, why don't you come work for Dreamlife? And I said, well, why should I work there? Because it was open like 6 months. It was all out of network. And they said, well, we're physician owned and operated. And we believe in truly individualizing treatment, and then I met the staff. And that's where we are today, is that we are primarily in network at this point. And we created a truly individualized treatment product for every person that comes in the door, because we believe that treatment is not one size fits all, and that every person has a different need and a different reaction to different clinical practices, different medications, and we can't treat everybody the same way. We are dual diagnosis, and the residential track is trauma-informed care because trauma starts off everything, So we really do treat the patient that has a lot of co-occurring disorders with substance use disorder as a primary focus. But we have some phenomenal therapists in our building that are master's level licensed clinicians that all have secondary specialties like anxiety and depression, LGBTQIA. We have a primary Spanish speaking track. We have somebody who focuses on male sexual shame, all these different things that as a person comes in and we start to remove the toxins from their body and their secondary issues start to pop up. Now we have therapists there that are really treating not only the substance use disorder, but also the secondary issues that are popping up. It is not unheard of for a patient to see a therapist up to 2 times a week with us, which in other facilities, they might see a therapist once every other week, and we offer a really great mix of traditional and holistic treatment. So we do your regular CBT, DBT, but then we mix in holistic treatment, Reiki, yoga, nature therapy, adventure therapy. But we actually process after we do these things. So we're not just taking them for a walk and then coming back and saying, all right, guys, go to your rooms. We're actually processing and attaching the traditional therapy to it. We believe that, treatment, we have to heal the whole body, mind, body, and soul. If we don't attack all of it, you're not going to leave here healed. And it's our job to get you ready for your next level of care, who's going to continue the work that we've done, and that's the basis for Dreamlife Recovery.
It's very cool. And I love how you incorporate all of those different aspects. And obviously with your experience in treatment, if you love this facility, there's a reason why, and that they offer something that you didn't see somewhere else. I noticed that some of the things that you offer, at least wise on the website, is some biofeedback. What are you guys seeing? What results are you seeing with the biofeedback?
I wish I had accurate data for you, but that would be information I'd have to get from the facility.
Yeah.
But I can get that for you.
It's interesting. It's interesting to see.
I don't know answers.
Yeah, no, and that's okay because you're not the one doing it. I get that. But yeah. there's new, there's sensory rooms and there's biofeedback and there's.
We have. It's actually pretty cool. We have a sauna room, an aqua massage chair, and the sauna room is like infrared saunas, and then we have like a Reiki yoga room, and all of those things to the patients are amenities, right? Like they're all things that they can go access while they're in treatment. We use them as de-escalation processes, right? So like when somebody's feeling anxious or they might want to leave AMA, we'll be like, all right, why don't you go take 10 minutes in the sauna and then we'll come back and get you, They think that they're just going to sit in a sauna for 10 minutes when in reality, they're de-escalating during that process. They're calming down, their moods are coming down. It's also involves some chromotherapy, so we might have the lavender lights on. Next thing you know, they're feeling better. They don't want an AMA. You know what I mean? The aqua massage chair is like being in a hot tub on a massage chair. So you have somebody who's detoxing from heroin and their legs are kicking. We put them on the chair, and it feels like they're in a hot tub, and these are all really cool things that we have learned to do, through a process of, this term seems really cliche, but like we have people who come in our building that feel so unloved when they come in our building, and it's just we make them love themselves. Like we love them until they're ready to love themselves.
Which is so important because that's really at the core of the healing process is feeling loved, feeling connected, and then being able to love yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. I'm wondering. I've really enjoyed your story. I've enjoyed learning about Dreamlife and all of the aspects that they bring to the table. And I kind of did laugh. You said it's located in this really little town outside of Pittsburgh, and in my head I'm like, I don't think there's any little towns outside of Pittsburgh.
It's like a population of like 144 people. Like
Really?
Yeah. So it's like exit 91 off the turnpike. If you're heading towards Seven Springs ski resort, the ski resort, the town of Donegal is just really, really small. We're blessed because they're really receptive to the treatment center. It is kind of tucked away, and it's very difficult for anybody to leave the facility, which is always a benefit to most people. But it's just in an area that's just kind of remote. You know, it's about 2 hours from Harrisburg, an hour from Pittsburgh. It's not as far west as most people think.
Very cool. Yeah, and I love what you guys are incorporating. Let me ask you this. So now I ask this question. It's a little selfish, right? And I ask it every now and then. But are you a reader, and are you reading any books?
I am. I'm actually reading. It's actually funny that you bring that up. I'm reading right now Quit Like a Woman.
And what's the premise of the story?
It's Quit Like a Woman, the radical choice to not drink in a culture obsessed with alcohol. So it is about a woman's journey into recovery about 10 years prior, and how she stayed sober, kind of battling like the patriarchy of AA and all these different things, and what does that look like today.
Very cool. Thank you for sharing that. We all like to connect in different ways, and I'm sure that there's going to be people that just have loved your story and loved the approach that you take, and they're going to want to connect with you and with Dreamlife Recovery. What's the best way for them to connect with you?
They can give me a call, 609-851-2499. That's my personal cell. It has always been my personal cell, and anybody can call me at any time.
You know you're serious when you're willing to give out your cell number, right? That's awesome. Well, thanks for being on. Thanks for sharing. We'll have to catch up with you here, in a while and see where things are at with you. But what a rich story and a rich life that you're living. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I will talk to you guys soon.